Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at a documentary's filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay from the Movie Proposal Podcast, and with us is our documentary filmmaker, Christian Taylor.
Hey, Josh, so happy to have you here. And Jason,
thank you.
Too.
Hey there.
Yes, Jason's here too. Thanks for.
It was like that. Normally Josh does the intro, but Christian called me out, so like I kind of had to jump ahead. I don't know. It's all thrown off.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry to steal your thunder, Josh.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm used to it by now. So, well, hey, so you're back in the country.
I am, and we're all back together for the first time in quite a long time. It's been really a long time. And before we jump into documentary first stuff, I'd love you guys to catch everybody up on what's going on in, your world. Josh, we haven't talked about the Movie Proposal Podcast in a long time. I read somewhere on Twitter that Sky had a very visceral reaction to something. I can't remember what, but how are things on the Movie Proposal?
Yeah, I think they're great. Just steady Eddie. We watched a movie with Oscar Isaac. He's known for starring in Dune, the most recent Star Wars trilogy, many other things. His latest film is called The Card Counter. It's not the easiest film to watch. There's lots to praise about it, I think, but it's not a mainstream kind of film. Sky, on the other hand, hated it and just made it really entertaining to listen to Sky trash a movie. So it was fun.
Well, why is it hard to watch?
Well, it's hard to go into without spoiling it.
Yeah.
Is it violence or is it?
Well, there is violence in it, but there's not a lot of violence. I mean, there's talk of violence, and
is it boring?
It can be.
If you're not really engaged by it, I think you would find it pretty boring.
Is it hard to understand?
No, it's very linear. I guess one of the characters may have had something to do with like horrific torturing of other people. And that plays a role throughout the entire film of his life being impacted by that thing.
Okay.
And yeah, it's pretty horrific in some moments. Some moments just like,
But
and then
Josh, why do you think it's redeeming, or why do you think it's worth watching?
Well, I don't think it's worth watching for everyone. I think it's worth watching if you're a cinephile. And, for example, it just happens that the guy who wrote and directed this film wrote Taxi Driver. And I thought of Taxi Driver when I was watching The Card Counter, because Taxi Driver is held as this iconic film. And I eventually saw it. It's a disturbing film. I didn't like it. I never really want to see it again, but there's things about it, the way it unfolds, the acting, the dialogue, that so many films borrow from. And I felt the Card Counter was similar, where it was great acting. It was interesting how they're trying to tell this particular character's story, how it unfolded, but it's not necessarily entertaining. It's not funny. It's not adventurous. You don't necessarily care for the protagonist. So
yeah,
you really gotta like films to let's see what this is all about.
It's also like exceptionally linear in how it's told. Like, there's no real hiding the ball in this story. It's like everything just kind of, it happens and then it happens and then it happens and then it happens and it happens. It's just like there's a couple flashbacks here and there that explain things, and a little bit of narration and things like that. But it's very few characters headed in a direction, and you don't really know why they're headed in that direction. And then it gets there and you go, oh, okay. It's very complex in how, you could.
And are you talking about The Card Counter or Taxi Driver?
Card Counter. Yeah.
Card Counter.
Not Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver. Yeah. Masterpiece or whatever. The Card Counter, the character is complex, but you don't really get to see into it that much. It's very complex, but hidden kind of way.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
And so, Josh, out of all the most recent episodes, what would you recommend people watch if they're new to the Movie Proposal?
Well, first, you can't really watch it. You can watch our earlier episodes. So it's mostly listened to. We are now on Spotify. Are we still on Spotify?
I think so.
All right. That's new, but anyway, it's listen on Apple and we think Spotify. But
if anyone's seen Top Gun Maverick, you can go
Yeah.
listen to episode 131. We talked about Top Gun Maverick, and we talked a lot about the original Top Gun and things that were similar between them and things that were different. It was a lot of fun.
So Top Gun Maverick was definitely a crowd pleaser. A lot of people saw it. Some more people would probably enjoy that episode of us discussing it. With the card counter, very few people saw that. But if you want to get a taste of Sky, that'd be a good one to go to.
And where can people interact with you in Sky?
Well, all of us on Twitter. I don't know. Do you put our stuff in the show notes here, Jason?
I will today. Give me your Twitter handles just so.
JQ Lindsay.
JQ Lindsay. And then what about you, Jason?
Mine is
Jace
at
Ruggy?
Jace Ruggy, JaseRugggy. And then Sky Jitani is just Sky Jitani. That's his. He's very simple. Have I ever talked about how I didn't get the Jason Rugg at Jason Rugg handle on Twitter?
I've heard it on the Holy Post, I think, but tell me here.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Basically, somebody took it in like 2 months before I joined Twitter. Some other Jason Rugg out there. There aren't that many of us, and it's become just like a spam account that just like tweets about, hey, go gamble on this online gambling, whatever, use my code and all this sort of stuff. It's just, and it hasn't tweeted since like, I don't know, 2012 or something now. It's just like, I'm stuck with some other off-brand version of Jason Rugg.
Well, maybe it'll roll off or they'll cancel it. You'll be able to get it back.
Yeah, so they were gonna do that, funny enough. And then a bunch of people were like, so this is actually like, you're gonna delete my dead friend's Twitter account, and it's basically like an archive of his thoughts, and you can't delete that. So they stopped that initiative, and so now dead accounts just live on forever being dead.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh well, speaking of Jason Rugg, tell us what's been happening in your world.
Yeah. So I don't want to go too deep into it, but we got some fun. Sean and I got a interesting opportunity to submit some scripts to an upfront type deal, which is kind of where things get to go and see if anyone has interest in them or in us and that sort of thing. So that's why I wasn't actually here last week, as we realized that deadline was not in the middle of July, and in fact it was July 1st. So
what's it like to scramble at the last minute like that?
Oh, it was fun. It was a lot of, strategizing. Okay, so, that's the interesting thing is we had 3 projects we were trying to submit. And so we had to like triage them, right? We had to go for like, okay, this is the one that's the furthest away from where we want it to be. And we had to work on that and get everything ready and get all the pieces ready and then work our way through it that way. We had to write a group, a bio about us, projects we worked on, all that sort of stuff. And so it became a very interesting the day we realized it was when we triaged it. We were like, okay, we need to do this, then this, then this, then this, and this. And, I went through and made a list of all the pieces we need and what we needed to do on them. And, we were texting each other, at like 1 a.m, like, oh, I just thought we could do this. And it was a mad dash until that Friday. And we finally got it done. And now we won't know until like September or October if we even get to talk to anybody. But that's how the business goes, right? It's just like, you apply for things, you reach out to people, you pitch people things, you send people to things, and then half a year later they go, oh yeah, no.
Sounds like the Army. Hurry up and wait, and then the mission's canceled. Yeah, I've heard that story a lot in all my interviews. Well, we wish you the best of luck. We know more often than not these turn out no's, but we really I appreciate your determination, your commitment. How are things going on Instagram? Are you continuing to increase your following?
Yeah, so we've actually put a little bit of a hold on posting things for a little bit now. We're focusing on formatting those into like actual episodes of a thing. And so we have 6 episodes of that. We're showing that around to some people and starting to get a little bit of interest from people and, seeing us as not just writers, but also as producers and directors, because that's what we did when we made it. So we've put the animation stuff on hold for just a little bit while we're focusing on trying to see what we can do with what we currently have and if anyone's interested in it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, awesome. Well, I know that our listeners love hearing from you guys, so thanks for taking time to get us updated.
Of course. Yes.
Which, Josh, before we move, what's our next movie we're doing on the movie proposal?
Well, yeah, I was just so the challenge is always seeing a movie and then what's available. And thankfully with streaming, it means we don't have to rush to the theater to see something that we may not be interested in seeing, like the card counter. We could just kill time at home and watch that. But we're due this week. In fact, it's Tuesday. We're due for something in 2 days. And
yeah,
Thor is coming out, so we'll definitely do Thor.
Yeah, so that's a little ways off.
Yeah,
maybe we could see the rise of Gru.
Perhaps.
I tell you, we'll see. Can't wait.
Well, let's shift gears and jump back onto the Girl Who Wore Freedom and other projects. You have a couple updates, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I want to talk about is a sad update. I hope I can do this without it being too emotional, but we lost the last band of brother. And he's also in our film, and he's sort of a cherished member of my family, is what it feels like. So Brad Freeman lived in Caledonia, Mississippi. So we bonded over our, shared love of the state. I met Brad Freeman in 2017 when I went over there for the very first time to figure out if making a movie in Normandy would really be possible. We were going to Brécourt Manor that day to meet with Charles de Valavier. And as it turned out, Brad Freeman was going to be there as well that same day. He was doing a tour with the World War II Museum from New Orleans, and Eric Dorr, who is the director of the Gettysburg Museum in Pennsylvania. And we met him for the first time. And it was so incredible because he had actually helped liberate Danny's town of Saint Marie du Mont. He was under Dick Winters and the Band of Brothers, like that core group of Easy Company. He was one of the original men at Toccoa. He was one of the first planes that jumped, that flew over Normandy. And, he was in the back of the line, so behind the original guys that kind of took the guns out at Brécourt Manor. But there that day, he showed us where one of his mortar shells had landed, on the farm. So that was super powerful. He was a very tender man, quiet, super, super quiet, very gentle. He was 97 years old. The last time I was there, actually, when we showed up, he was shelling pecans. And that day I was there to introduce him to Flo Plana and Flo's wife, Jenny. And he ended up making us roasted pecans that day. So I have a really warm memory of being there with him. I wanted to read sort of a little summary just because it's important for us never to forget. So let me indulge me a minute as I read this little, not an obituary, but just a little summary of his life. Former U.S. Army Private First Class Brad Freeman, the last surviving member of the 101st Airborne Division's Easy Company, the 2nd Battalion of the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment that inspired the book and HBO series Band of Brothers, has died. Freeman, who was presented with a Silver Service Medallion at the National World War II Museum's American Spirit Awards in New Orleans last month, died this past Sunday, July 3rd. He was 97. He was preceded in death by his wife, Willie Louise, who he had known since they were children, and they had 2 daughters, Beverly and Becky. He enlisted in the military at 18. And I remember he told me that he did because of Pearl Harbor. He remembered hearing it on the radio, ran home, and decided he was going to join up. He volunteered as a paratrooper, he told me, because he got more money than if he just joined the regular Army. He was one of 8 children who grew up working on a dairy farm and joined the military while he was a freshman at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is one of 3 major universities, Ole Miss being the other, and University of Southern Mississippi being the third. And Mississippi State is the agriculture college. So he was studying agriculture there. And one of his brothers also wanted to become a paratrooper, and he joined the military as well, but ended up in the Pacific fighting against Japan. He entered the Army on December 1942, a year after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And in the fight against the Germans, he was part of the mortar squad and was on one of the first 3 planes on D-Day. During his time in the military, he was wounded at the Battle of the Bulge. He saw action in Operation Market Garden and was part of the occupying troops in Berchtesgaden in Austria. He had been stationed in Aldeburgh, England, and was scheduled to jump on June 5th, but as many people know, that was postponed because of bad weather. His job in the invasion was carrying the mortar's base plate. So people who don't know what a mortar is, it's basically an artillery weapon that basically shoots a big artillery shell, and you can only shoot one at a time. And it is carried by the infantry, and I think 2 or 3 pieces, maybe just 2, with a base plate and then sort of a tripod thing that the cannon sits on top of. So he carried the base plate, which was extremely heavy, actually, and it was what kept the gun anchored. Sergeant Don Malarkey, who was featured in the Band of Brothers, carried the other part of the weapon, and 3 fellow soldiers carried the ammunition. Now, Don Malarkey, as the article says, was in Band of Brothers, and Brad Freeman was never mentioned, which will come up in just a second. In later years, he recalled how Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe, ordered his company to take the German-occupied beach town on a French peninsula. He recalled, which of course was Saint Marie du Mont, he recorded how his unit subsequently jumped into Eindhoven, the Netherlands, in the largest airborne offensive on September 17th in Operation Market Garden. After that, Easy Company and the 101st Airborne were the combined linchpin to victory at the Battle of the Bulge, defending Bastogne, Belgium in December, and relieved by elements of General George Patton's Third Army. And that's why you'll see a big statue of General Patton in Bastogne if you go there. It's an amazing town to visit. During that time, Brad Freeman was shot in the right leg during the battle. He recovered in England and he returned to his company. And while they were guarding a bridge near the Eagle's Nest, Germany surrendered. He had then served in the military long enough to return home in Mississippi, where he resumed farming and then became a mail carrier for the U.S. Postal Service for 30 years. He, again, an amazing man. I was so happy to know him. One of my favorite memories was when you went to his home, he would show you all of these different artifacts, pictures of his children, his 2 daughters and his grandsons. And then people have sent him things over the years, all sorts of things to thank him and to, just to connect with him. But one of the things that he pulled out when I went to visit him was a scrapbook that had been done for him a long time ago of pictures with him and Prince Charles. And he told me a story about how he didn't want to go over and meet Prince Charles. And this was a big anniversary. It was a big deal. And he was invited to meet the prince and he refused to go. But here they are, pictures with him, with Prince Charles. And I said to him, well, how did this happen? And he said, well, Tom Hanks gave me a call and told me I had to go.
All right.
And I was like, okay. Well, so it was such a sweet moment. We captured it. We made a little video that's on our YouTube page. And I think the title of that is, it took a mountain, to move Brad Freeman, and that mountain was Tom Hanks, something like that. So that was a sweet moment. And the other thing that he was so proud of was that he showed me a book. He told me that Dick Winters was his good friend and that he had saved him a room for he and his wife on his farm in Pennsylvania. And then he pulled out a book from his shelf. And that book was called Evaders, and it was a book by Leo Heap, The Most Remarkable Mass Escape of World War II. And that's the name of the book. And he showed me the inside cover. And it says, this was written on February 10th, 1989. Dear Brad, although your name is not mentioned in the index, you have the satisfaction of knowing you were there. You helped get the job done. You know many details about the rescue that your leaders and Leo Heap never knew. Furthermore, you never forget even one detail. Hang tough, Major Dick Winters. And he was so proud of that and proud to show that to us. I loved it because he always, I knew it was legitimate because, only Dick Winters would say something like that, but he also signed it Hang Tough, which is what he traditionally signed his, his letters with. And Brad did hang tough till he was 97 years old. He had a simple life on his little house in Caledonia, fed his chickens every morning, had lots of cats that continued to multiply in his garage. So he will be missed for sure. So you can Google Brad Freeman. I'm sure you'll find more information about him and some interviews as well, but we'll probably put up some more videos and pictures just to remember him. So thank you guys for taking time to listen to me honor Brad Freeman. We're so thankful he'll be in our film forever. It's pretty special.
No, it was really sweet. Yeah. And that just on a side note, my 15-year-old son and I are working our way through the Band of Brothers right now, as a matter of fact. And so I'll have to update him, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, what's going on with the actual film projects right now?
Yeah, we met last week with Zach Callahan, who is the writer, and we talked a lot about sort of his writing process and everything he's been doing for the Carentown Project. We talked about a little fun interaction we had with Grace Rapp, who was one of our crew members. I tried to get Grace to be on our podcast today, but she was on vacation in South England with her family, so hopefully she'll be back. And quite frankly, since last week's podcast, not a lot has happened. We have been on the 4th of July sort of break. Everybody's just kind of taken time off. But there have been a lot of things going on in my mind, actually, that I'd like to share. And one of them is just been this sort of general low feeling and feeling quite lost and like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Do I even really want to do this anymore? Could I ever get this movie funded? Tons of self-doubt, tons of just a low feeling that I hadn't been able to express. But I reached out to a bunch of team members while we were, when we were shooting in Normandy, and asked if there was such a thing as like post-principal depression, because I really did feel such a loss after that time. And like for days, it was really hard for me not to be super sad. And absolutely, it's totally a thing, especially when you get along so well with all of your crew. I can imagine if it's a stressful, terrible shoot with people you don't like, you're happy to be away. But in our situation, everybody gelled so well, even though we had lots of problems. We were able to accomplish our purpose, and we did it with love and laughter and joy and satisfaction. And then we came back, and I did get adjusted to not being in this like little new family. But now, Bill Ebel is unavailable to work on editing stuff for the sizzle reel until like September. And there's just kind of this slowdown. And so there's that. So I just wanted to just say that out loud and know that this is a typical normal part of the filmmaking process. I think it will pass. But if this has ever happened to you, never fear. It won't last. I know I've been in this place before, and here I am again, but it won't last.
I believe it's real. I get depressed after every time I record a movie proposal podcast.
Really?
Really?
I think because it's so exciting leading up to it for me, and then it's fun doing it. And then inevitably in the car ride home after doing it, I'm thinking, why did I say that? Did I mention this? Gosh, I'm an idiot. Why do people listen to this thing? Like, it's just this. I, I mean, but that's how it is. Like anytime any kind of perform or whatever, like, but maybe more of like an impromptu type performance, not like a rehearsed performance, but I usually question anything that I said or did, which is, and then you have nothing to work towards, and you're like, well, what am I doing next? And these are just like little mini, like, I mean, these are little, these things last briefly, but when you have a giant project, I can see how you'd be like, just, well, like it's like all this energy momentum is going towards something, and then just everything's quiet, and you're like, well, what's my purpose in life, and was it even worth it?
Yeah, total questioning. And I think for me, in the pre-production, you are working towards something really hard, and you're starting with a group of people and you're all kind of working remotely typically. And then you're in principal photography and you're all together. So there's this excitement of meeting each other in person for the first time. And now the stuff that you've been working on in pre-production is kind of coming to fruition. So you're seeing it kind of all come together. In the meantime, you're gelling as a team in an intense situation where you're all undergoing the same stresses at the same time. You're learning about new people, but you get bonded very quickly because you're in this intense experience. And then as quickly as it started, it's over. It's over. Everybody goes their separate ways. And you will never have that time again. You won't. It's gone. And so particularly if it's good, there is total sadness there because it's a loss. And, for me, and Jason, I'm sure it's true for you, and even Josh, to you extent, because you're an independent contractor, but I work in isolation so much. I'm just alone, and I'm not a loner. I am a people person. And so it's super hard to kind of come back into my cubicle and work in front of a computer again,
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Pre-COVID, I work in an office with, there are about 10 other self-employed people. And then when COVID happened, everyone was sent home. We found out we could actually work in our offices sooner than most people. But so I came back to the office, but most people did not come back to the office. And so it was very quiet, and I'm an extrovert, so I get energy from being around people. And so it's, that was rough, just not being around people. And then you're like, and then just being self-employed in general, you have to like lay out your agenda and what you're going to do that day. And just some days, you're just may not be in the mood. But if you have people around you, there's accountability, there's expectation. If you have a boss, you have more of a reason to get something done. But if you're by yourself, you're like, ugh, and the energy's not there. That's where the real, that's where, kind of the adult separate themselves from the kids, like they do it regardless of how they feel.
So true. So true. And I think, there is a part where, you have this intense, it was an intense, 10 days, let's say, of this experience that I had. And I definitely needed to rest from that. I was exhausted when it was over. And so, I had 2 weeks in Normandy where I had like follow-up meetings and stuff like that, but I primarily was resting. And then I came home and, even more alone, coming under this mountain of home tasks, family tasks, and not fun film production tasks. And, that's a lot to adjust to. You do need to rest, but, I can see why people, in some senses, they just seek that, let's do a movie, and then they never get done because the backside of it just isn't fun. Oftentimes, it's not the same amount of energy or excitement or fun around it. There's a different speed of things with this project. If we look at The Brave Dutch, there was an intense amount of time where we were visiting in October of 2021, meeting people, developing story, hopeful that we would get money. It was pitched to all of these different places and we were completely rejected all the way around. And so now we're thrown into the situation of, okay, what do we do next? And that's taking time to figure out. And then, okay, well, we have this Carenton project that we can do right away. So we did the principal photography because we were already going to be there for the sizzle reel. But there is no urgency, like we were trying to make the 75th anniversary of D-Day the first time. And so we had like this urgency to get it finished and tons of pressure. Well, there's not that now. And it's going to have to develop at the pace it develops, and money is going to be the key indicator of that. And I think this is why films take such a long time. Typically, I was able to raise the money relatively quickly because we had this desire to have it done by the 75th anniversary of D-Day. But in this situation, there's really no reason to get it done quickly. And so I just have to kind of proceed along as things go. And so I don't know, it's a different experience. And that's where I am today.
Jason, what do you do? Because you and Sean are not in the same state, so you guys are pretty isolated yourselves.
Yeah, we're 2,000 miles apart, roughly, and 2 time zones. And so, like, when Sean was working and commuting, we would do a call every single morning. I would get up early so we could have a call, talk about what we're doing that week, talk about what we're working on that day. Sometimes we would be doing joke punch-ups on scripts and stuff, working remotely. Like I would read a joke to him and he would go, oh, there's something about that's not quite working. We would work on it, that sort of thing. It's quite a challenge. I do really, really like having a partner. I've been making stuff in some capacity since I was 11, and it's really nice to have somebody to, put soft deadlines on with each other, to challenge each other to, hey, I know neither of us are really feeling this right now, but why don't we just open it up and give it a shot, that sort of thing. And it's interesting to have someone to try and mesh with creatively. And it's worked really, really well for us so far. And so I think, and the interesting thing is that I'm an introvert. And so like, it seems counterintuitive that like you two work on your own and are extroverts, and I work with a partner and I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
But it's just it's interesting. And, I have friends who want to do the same sort of stuff I do, and they are completely, solo artists. They write, they direct, they do everything themselves. And it's just so much easier to have someone to work with all the time, because it's funny when you get to the end of a project, normally you have to kind of step back and go, okay, that's the project. I need to step back and reevaluate it with fresh eyes. But when you have 2 different people who've been working on it separately and together and, that sort of thing, you can kind of do that as you go. You can have, he can look at what I did and I can look at what he did, and we can, kind of do that as we go. So we don't have to necessarily take time, step back at the end of it. We usually do because, then we both have fresh eyes on everything. But yeah, it's an interesting process finding how that works. Because, again, like, I finding time is the interesting thing, because it's, again, living 2,000 miles apart and just hopping on a phone call so we can talk for 15 minutes. It kind of makes it easier because you don't actually have to go be in the same place and work together. And, that carves out a lot of time. But if you can just hop on a phone call and do 15 minutes of work here or there, that kind of makes it easier, as well as harder. So it's, finding a balance between those things.
Yeah. And that kind of rings a bell for me, because with the Girl Who Wore Freedom, I had that just about every day with Bill Ebel and Michelle Coupé, because we were talking constantly about stuff. And with Bill being out until September, I thought I was going to come back. He had time. We were going to download footage, talk about the footage. I can show him what we did. We can, figure out a path. And I had all that energy right away to, invest that with Bill, and he got booked on a project. And that's another sort of collateral damage of not being able to pay Bill. If I was able to pay Bill, perhaps, he could have kept on the job. And that's kind of the way it is with everybody on my team. Frankly, a lot of stuff has changed, which now that I'm talking about it out loud makes me realize that's probably what's going on. We lost less than half of our support on Patreon. one of our big donors had, given their amount that they wanted to give, which are so thankful for, but noticed a big drop when they left. And so that happened. And then I've had several crew members that said they needed to pull back because of, time and money constraints. And here I am going, how am I going to put all this together? How are we going to get anything done with nobody here and no money again? So, we'll see what happens in the future. The other thing I think that was hard this week, and I'll just kind of skip into this, is that we've been hit with the reality that distribution after, a year and a half of where we started. So I guess really a little more than a year. We're in a different position. And if a distributor is going to take our film on, in a sense, I've been told, they're doing us a favor because we've already released, and really there's no incentive for them to pick us up because it's going to be a hard property to market. And they're probably not going to spend a lot of marketing dollars there. We're going to have to continue marketing ourselves. They're probably going to ask for a much longer period of commitment, up to 10 to 15 years. I mean, that's one distributor. Yeah, we'll do that for 30% for 10 years. And that's kind of a bummer because, I thought that signing a 5-year deal at 25% interest was bad. And I don't think I've gone from the frying pan into the fire necessarily, because I think if I do another distribution deal, it will be with people of character. And at least I have confidence that they will pay. It's just that I don't have any bargaining chips anymore. I really don't. No bargaining chips, and I have no money. And, new distribution contracts we're looking at mean that we're going to have to do some new stuff that's going to cost us even more money. Perhaps we have to buy our own E&O insurance. Perhaps we have to, I know that I'm going to have to renew licenses on some of the material in our film. That's going to cost me money. So I'm in a weird space right now, and I'm not quite sure how to improve things or overcome things with the Girl Who Wore Freedom. Not sure how to move things forward with the Carenton project. Not sure what to do about needing more staff. Not sure what to do about getting more Patreon support back. So I guess it kind of makes sense that I'm a little low this week.
Well, it's not an unusual pattern. I mean, through this podcast, we've seen the highs and the lows, and nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden everything's happening, and there's no one that's interested, and all of a sudden these corporations are interested, and there's ups and downs. So I think it's normal. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's a normal part of the process.
Yeah, it's a cycle of life, I guess. Circle of life, cycle of life. And I know it's not going to be like this forever. But it's where we are today. And I'm not going to walk away or quit or give up or think that, everything's horrible. It's just the way things are today. And, we'll see what happens going forward.
Well, we'll hear more about that on upcoming podcasts. In the meantime, as we are rounding the bend, getting ready to land this plane, let's switch gears and head into our section, because it's now time for DocuView Déjà Vu.
DocuView Déjà Vu.
Congratulations, Josh. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was one of my better ones, I guess. So I'll go first. Have I mentioned we really need a way to track this, because now this is like,
we do have a way to track this. I'll share the Google Drive with you.
Okay.
Google Drive.
Does Val, the documentary Val with Val Kilmer, did we talk about that?
I do not remember this.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
I think we did a movie proposal on it. That might be what you're remembering.
Okay. Well, this is a documentary on Amazon. It's made by Val Kilmer about Val Kilmer. It's called Val, VAL. He, throughout his acting career, got a video camcorder and just shot a ton of footage just throughout his career as an actor, which was very unique because you got to see some very interesting footage, like when he was in a play with, I think, Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon and different actors like that when they were younger, and Val was a no-name guy, and so that was fascinating. You got to hear about his life, his career, and then of course he had this and I forget the actual disease. He had something to do with his throat where he can no longer speak. Was it cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he had cancer.
Throat cancer, I believe. Yeah.
So just seeing that and how his children are involved in his life, and it's an excellent documentary, and especially for someone who grew up, I was a fan of Top Gun. I loved Willow. There's a bunch of films with Val Kilmer in it that he was one of those action hero. Like when his name was in a movie, you're like, ooh, we got to check this out, right? So if you're of that generation or you like documentaries about actors, it's definitely worth checking out.
Awesome. I'm interested, especially since in just watching Top Gun Maverick, I didn't realize he had been sick, and I didn't realize that was actually probably his last role. And the story about him being involved in there and the relationship with Tom Cruise, I thought was really sweet. I looked it up after the movie. So thanks for that rec.
Jason,
All right,
you got one?
Yeah. So this is one I've started and I haven't finished yet. But I feel like I've talked about the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO a ton because I love it so much.
So good.
HBO just released within like the last week or so a movie called Chernobyl: The Lost Tapes, and it's a bunch of archival footage newly discovered, and so they take you through the entire thing. And so it starts out and life's normal, and then the reactor blows up, and then you keep going through it, and it's so fascinating to watch, having seen Chernobyl and realizing how accurate all the costumes were, all the signage was, all the buildings. It's so accurate and just so incredibly cool to watch. So yeah, if you're interested in Chernobyl, if you're interested in learning more about what caused an RBMK reactor to blow up, it's a pretty cool little look into that, I guess, about 40 years ago, the Chernobyl disaster. So yeah, and some of it's film, some of it's like VHS tape, some of it's stuff that was recorded off a TV because it's news footage and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty cool mix of archival footage.
That's interesting. I was really shocked when I found a few people in Normandy who were taking thyroid medication, and I was asking what was going on with that, and I was told that it was sort of the dust clouds of Chernobyl that caused people in Normandy to have trouble with their thyroid. And I was like, what? Really? But apparently it's true.
Yeah. They don't even know how many millions of lives were shortened by that disaster. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. Wow.
Most of Europe was affected.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that recommendation. I am going to share one that I just really loved, and I watched it on my way back from Normandy, and it's called Julia. It was released in 2021 by CNN. It's about the life of Julia Child. This film documents the story of this cookbook author and television superstar who changed the way Americans think about food, television, and even about women. The directors are Julie Cohen and Betsy West. And I have to tell you, it is just chock full with women producers and above the line people as well as below the line people. I found it to be an incredibly well done documentary, and there were many things I didn't know in there, including that she's a World War II veteran, interestingly enough, and she had a beautiful marriage, so fascinating. It was just unbelievable to learn the behind the scenes of who she was. Because I remember growing up and actually watching cooking shows that she did with her, with my mom. And, she was such a force of nature when I was little in the 70s and 80s. And I just really had no idea how her life began. And so it was a well done documentary. The archival footage was fascinating. Especially if you love cooking shows, it made me very interested in going back and trying some of her recipes and what I love is how you see how real she is and not pretending to be something she's not. She was the queen of dealing with mistakes as they happen on air. So great doc.
What that makes me think of is the classic Dan Aykroyd Saturday Night Live skit where he portrays Julia Childs and accidentally cuts herself, but it turns to be just a gashing, bloody vein that's opened up and blood is spewing everywhere.
Yes,
great.
And she actually watched that and liked it and laughed. It's included in this documentary.
Oh, is it really? Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, definitely check out those for sure. Christian, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
Well, for those Patreon supporters that continue to support us monthly, your support is just incredibly valued. And I know that that is something that you have committed to doing monthly. It means so much to us, more now than ever. I ask that you, if you're a praying person, please pray about that we would just get a vision and an understanding of where we're supposed to go next, whether it's Patreon, the Carentan Project, the Brave Dutch, or the Girl Who Wore Freedom. Just help, ask the Lord to help us know where to go and what to do. You can refer your friends to thegirlwhoworefreedom.com. Right now, that's the only place to watch the film. You can either stream it through our website on Gumroad, or you can order a DVD. So make sure to share that with people. And that's about it for now.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, we were glad to catch up with you, Christian. Welcome back to the United States. And we want to say thank you for listeners for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell and you can be the one to tell it.
Yes, you can. Bye, everybody.